right-thinking people will do anything to protect their children and keep them from going to prison. If that really is a possibility here, there's been some signal that that's under consideration, then Weisselberg may be closer to flipping than not.
It is another pattern of the Trump era, Frank Figliuzzi, fathers and sons in most instances. I want to widen the circle, though, beyond fathers and sons and just put up all of the Trump associates ensnared in investigations. Rudy Giuliani under federal investigation, I think by 2 U.S. attorneys' offices in New York, SDNY in the Brooklyn office. Victoria Tensing also tied to one of those Giuliani investigations. Eric Trump has been deposed by one of the New York investigations. Donald Trump Jr. has been deposed as the D.C. investigation into the 2016 inauguration. And Alan Weisselberg has been investigated, or at least interviewed in multiple probes. What does that look like for prosecutors? I mean, do they look at sort of a culture? Is that why the company is on the precipice of being criminally charged?
Yeah, it matters, and I'll get to that in a second. But let's add, you know, as of today, we have Mother Jones reporting in a great piece that Ivanka, in her testimony to the D.C. Attorney General about the inauguration committee and enriching the Trump International Hotel and the organization, seems to have perjured herself about essentially saying, no, I had no role in the inauguration committee. Yet there's emails and emails with her on them, you know, right down to selecting the menu and the catering and hosting events during the inauguration. So let's add her to the list of the friends and family that are caught up in a toxicity that, there's a culture of corruption. And yes, investigators and prosecutors pay attention to that because it actually can go toward the approach and strategy to a prosecution, and whether you're looking at an enterprise approach, whether you're going to claim that the entire organization is systemically corrupt, that it exists to commit fraud, or fraud is how it does business, and therefore that allows you to take down an entire organization. And it makes a difference when you're deciding to charge corporate officers at an organization, if it's systemic, if they were all in it and coordinated and collaborated together. That helps prosecutors decide whether individuals need to go to prison as well.
You know, Josh, I remember, I think it was maybe 2018, one of the turnovers between chiefs of staff, one of the candidates asked as a condition of potential employment for legal defense funds to be committed. This person didn't end up taking the job, and I don't know if those funds were committed, but it wasn't because he thought he'd commit a crime on the senior staff. It was because even Trump's closest allies were cognizant of all the criminality and corruption around the ex-president. Do you think they're really going to be successful in blaming this on a loose network of state, local, and federal investigators and prosecutors?
Well, it's hard to know, but Nicole, I mean, what the former president is trying to do is convince the Republican grassroots, which are far more likely to be with him, but that is the case. I mean, you've seen throughout the presidency, there's been a durability where his numbers have stayed, you know, in the low 40s, and those people believe him basically no matter what he says. His famous quote was "shoot someone on Fifth Avenue," and I think they've stuck with him no matter what. And I think you're seeing an effort to convince those folks of that. I think past that, it depends what the charges are. If there's, incontrovertible evidence or compelling evidence that there was, decades of tax fraud, I don't know that to be true. I'm just saying if there is that, then it is probably more difficult to sell. I guess if the charges are less severe, there's an argument that he can make that it was an overreach. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what the evidence and the actual charges, if they come, are here.
So, Joyce, there is a pattern over the last 4 years of news about the ex-president's legal woes breaking in the next 2 hours. Say that happens. We learn that his company has been charged. What are your first questions?
The first thing I want to do is exactly what Frank was talking about. I want to read the indictment and see what the actual charges are and who they're brought against, because that will tell us whether this is a limited sort of an indictment or whether it's a broad, expansive prosecution that's now underway. You know, it's really important to remember that the New York Attorney General has rolled her investigation into the DA's investigation. That suggests that this isn't some low-hanging fruit, that there's really something serious afoot here. Whether that would all come out in an initial indictment or whether there would be a staged sort of prosecution here, we don't yet know the answer to. But I want to read the document as soon as it's available.
Josh Dawsey, since you are on this beat and on this story, stay close to your camera. If news breaks, please come back and share it with us. Joyce Vance and Frank Figliuzzi, same time.